Welcome to Inside Style. I'm your host, George Worrell, and thank you for tuning in today. Today's topic is, an amazing topic. From a person who goes from defense industry veteran to passionate actor and traveling photographer. Marvin Bowser, our guest today, was born and raised in Washington, D.C. He comes from a family of prominent in local government, in politics. He has degrees from American University and George Washington University. He started acting while still in high school, but then life happened. College and a successful 34-year career in the defense industry. He returned to acting in what he calls his fourth chapter. I couldn't be happier. You can find him traveling with his camera when he's not on set. Welcome, Marvin Bowser. Hello, my friend.
Hello, and thanks so much for having me in that lovely introduction.
It's so funny when you have people on that you've known. We've known each other for years. And many of these things I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was so refreshing to just discover all of these hidden talents, my friend. So for the people who don't know, let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. You're you're born and raised here in Washington, D.C.,
Right.
and from a family that was involved in politics. Talk about growing up here in Washington.
Yeah, okay, thanks. So both of my parents are Washingtonians as well. So we're fifth generation Washingtonians here in the city. 5 siblings. You might know one of them. She's the mayor of Washington, D.C., my youngest sister, Muriel Bowser. We all went through Catholic schools, so went to 2 schools for 12 years of Catholic education, and then it was time to do something else. So I didn't do Catholic college or grad school, but it was a good place. It was a good place to start life. So what else about growing up in the city? So so I was here. I'm a man of a certain age, so saw a lot of change in the city. From the riots, to where we are today.
Really,
so,
you remember the riots?
Oh yeah, I do. I was a young person then, but I remember the smoke, tear gas, all that scary times.
Yeah.
Like going out or watching the television, and it was a scary time.
It's so funny because we're about the same age, and I remember as a young person thinking that I was probably going to have to go to war. Because it was at the end of the 60s was the Vietnam War. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm probably going to have to, and we had family here, so we knew about the riots and all of that.
Right.
So, after college and, all of that, you thought about when did the service come in? Because I understood that you...
Oh, so I was really self-aware at a young age. I knew I wanted to travel and learn foreign cultures, and I knew I wanted to go to college. And I did really well in high school, and when I started applying for colleges, I got some scholarship offers. All the service academies offered me something, and the one I took was a Air Force ROTC scholarship that paid for my undergraduate education at American University here in D.C. And I did well in college, did well in ROTC. I graduated and was commissioned like a few weeks apart, and I had 3 choices. You get to submit 3 choices for things you'd like to do as your first assignments in the Air Force. And I got my first choice, which was an assignment in Germany. I spent 4 years in Germany. The last 2 of which was in an underground bunker in a German national forest, which was a lot different. But and there was still the Soviet Union then, so things were real. We worked crazy hard, we drilled all the time, but when we weren't working, you had the opportunity to travel, and I ate my way across or skied my way across Europe in 4 years. Again, I was in my 20s, so metabolism being what it could, you could do that. And get up and ski in the morning, and then go back and work 3 days, around the clock for 3 days during a
And then have
big
that
exercise.
other time to, yeah. So how was that career? How did that parlay into your career in the defense industry?
Well, I served as an intelligence officer for the United States Air Force for 10 years. That's 4 years in Germany, 6 years back in the Pentagon. I was an intelligence briefer for General Colin Powell when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, towards the end of the time in the Pentagon. So again, being in the room where, the briefers, there's an ops briefer, intelligence briefer, and General Powell at the end of this long table that's surrounded by general officers, and the one-star generals are standing in the back, and 3 people can talk, the briefers and the general. Everybody else responds to questions from the general. That was an amazing experience.
Wow. And being of color for you and Colin Powell, like how many other people in there were of color with rank like that?
Very few.
Very few.
Very few.
Yeah.
Very few. No, I won't say there's just the 2 of us, but there are very few.
Yeah.
But,
How did that feeling of knowing that you were in the midst of all of that and being a man of color, were there any obstacles because of that?
Frankly, the obstacle is to get out of your head, get out of your own head, and not be overwhelmed by the gravity of what's happening, right? And do your job. Do your job so the general can do his job. That's so simple to say, but I'll tell you, we get down there, we do it. Like I do it, bang it out, go down there. You take the heavy uniform jacket off, and you'd have sweat pits running down to your waistband. But no crackling of voice, no shaking of the hands. You get there and tell the story that you were there to do. Like, do your job.
Wow. So, spiraling, did you think that would be something that you would do for, that would be it? Because 34 years is quite a...
Well, so finish your question.
So, did you think in all of that, going from being an officer and then parlaying going into a career in defense, did you think, because we're going to hit about the acting and all of that,
right,
did you think that at that, what you were doing then, that would just be it? Because we talk about the 4th chapter, but did you think that would be it at that time?
Perhaps, because my parents are very they're very I'd say classic in their approach to life. So they had jobs and careers that they work for. My father retired after 42 years. My mother, I think, retired after some high number in the 30s. She's an RN, and my father worked in district government for those 42 years. And they bought a house in the early 60s. They still live in that house. This is the way it was done. And so that career, work and build a life was how we were raised. And so when I left the Air Force after 10 years, I told them I was leaving. They're like, what are you it was like they couldn't even think about that. It's like, well, but you'll retire. You can retire in 10 more years. I'm like, yeah, but there's other things I want to do, right? So I actually worked for the Navy for 6 years, their worldwide special communications, and then 18 years as a defense contractor, where I did, started with communications, networking related things, and ended up in research and development, during early development for autonomous naval vessels, and life was good until it wasn't, right? And I gotten to be fairly senior at that large defense contractor, and there's. How do you say this quickly? So as you go higher up, there are fewer jobs, and if you're not in that chute to get one of those fewer jobs, so you get pushed out, because at that point you're expensive to keep around. And when I was offered a package, I took it, and it took me. I had a secret goal to retire at 55 and do something else. I didn't want to be and I work with people who are like they had money. It wasn't because they couldn't afford to retire, but they're still working at 70. It's like I'm not going to be one of those dudes. So when I took the package and negotiated like the last day in the office, all that stuff, I realized that my last day in the office was the day before I turned 56. So I was like, holy gosh, Batman, like I made it. And then I had to figure out what I was going to do. And I spent about that first year, I had a list of things I wanted to try, and I whittled that down to the photography and acting.
So the acting bug had been there for...
Yeah, yeah, and but I didn't have time to do that because you said earlier, like life happened and you just couldn't do it. But when I had time again, I actually started. Oh gosh, how do I get back in it? So I was. A friend of mine asked me to make opening comments at an awards program for his nonprofit, and I'm like, sure. So I was in the green room waiting to go on, and these actors from a web series I was following start walking in. I was like starting recognizing people, and I was talking to one of the writers, and this guy comes in with a camera, and he goes, do you mind if I take pictures? I'm like, no. So he starts bringing other actors over, and we're taking pictures. Well, what he was doing was taking family pictures for the Davenports. The character he that night he said, would you do a cameo and play Baron Davenport? So for a couple seasons they've been talking about Baron Davenport, but they hadn't cast him. So they saw me and it's like, that's Baron, and they're saying like, this Baron, I don't know who Baron is. I'm just sitting there like, what's going on? So I did a season on Triangle, and then they did a spinoff that they had. It had already existed, but they had, it was like on the shelf, so they pulled the Davenports out, and I did a season of the Davenports.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because people may think, okay, yeah, so you just transitioned into, that's a big transition, and two, it's remembering character, getting in all. Can we just talk about that a little bit?
The offer was a cameo. So for me, a cameo is like, there's a scene in a restaurant, you're sitting at table number 2 eating your oatmeal, right? That's a cameo. The camera pans across, there you are, keeps going. I get like 7 or 8 pages of text.
Okay.
And the scene is with a woman who plays my daughter, who's supposed to be like a mini me, and the character is like Blake Carrington, this ruthless business guy with all these secrets and all that stuff. And the daughter is that person again, but she's like this big personality, and she stands as tall as I do. She's physically gorgeous, but physically is as big as I am, with this big voice and all up in your face. And her style is all up in your face all the time. So as you said, I'm trying to remember lines, and I I memorized my lines. I didn't memorize her lines, so I didn't know any of the cues. So it was disaster. But we spent a couple hours, which should have taken 20, 30 minutes. We spent a couple hours doing that, and I did it. What was
your technique about remembering? Because that's hard. Because that's one of the reasons, with my show, that there's not really a script. There's a little bit of a script, but it's for me. Some people it's not. To be able to remember.
Well, I think, and I learned to do it the wrong way, where you're just trying to memorize words. And it's wrong. It's like you should understand what the story is, what the interaction is with the characters, what the mood is, and what the conflict is. And if you understand all that, and then what needs to be said, even if you don't know the words on the page, you can say something.
In the feeling.
And because I think my engineering and military background, I wanted to be very exact. So I let trying to memorize the words and to read the I don't say regurgitate, but like deliver words as written would lock me up. And I still I'm aware of it now, so it's not as bad, but it's still a problem. And since then I've been on TV sets. And the actors, without fail, when you get it's action, there's action, and they get it done, and that is what is expected by all the other people on the set, because we just don't have time to go back and do a lot of retakes because you don't know what you're doing up there. And when everybody's watching you, there's no place to hide. So it's a bad feeling.
So when people say be prepared because
but it's kind of like more than, and at the same time less than trying to memorize everything. It's like if you know why you're there and what's going on, and you're comfortable, and like I said earlier, get out of your head. You can do it, and you'll do it. I mean, and then most directors are looking for you to bring something else to the stage. So if all you've done is memorized, you're not doing your job. You have to bring that something else that makes that part your own, that elevates the interaction between you and your scene partners. It's like you have to do more than just what's written on the page.
Did that come from doing it, studying, and just evolving? Do you think you've evolved in it?
I mean, it's all the, so I've studied, I've done all of it, but even with the study, I studied theater, and people say, well, you study theater and it translates to screen better, but I think that military engineering thing, it's like it was really hard for me to let go of like the technique where you're on stage and you can't make little eye gestures to convey. You've got to do something bigger, and I was still doing bigger stuff because that felt more natural for me because of what I've gone through training wise, but it doesn't work on screen. So I think the first time I just got out there and I was comfortable, and I didn't have like a bunch of butterflies, and I was just ready to go. I was ready to do this, and then it occurred to me, it's like, oh, this is what prepared feels like.
And you just kept doing it and getting asked and getting calls and things like that, and that felt good, didn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
How was to me, the photography and the acting are partnerships, because one has a vision of something on paper that you want to play, but then visually, when you see something behind the camera that you want to take or that you want to see, that it too is creative. How was your journey? Let's talk about your journey in photography and just being able to see, because I remember, what was it, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I went to your showing at Lee's Florist, and the flowers, I still have it. What was your feeling about that journey of adding that to what you do?
What your question of where I thought you were going wants me to want to say something.
Well, go ahead.
But I want to get back to this other one. So the difference between like acting and photography for me as an artist, when I'm acting, I haven't written anything for myself yet. That's true, yeah. So I'm working off of someone else's vision, and that with photography, it's mine. So I'm the director of photography. I'm like doing everything, and I choose like what I'm doing. And if I'm doing a client project, that's fine. But I still, if you ask me to do headshots, it's like I take a fine art approach to everything I do with the camera. So it's not like you go to people used to go to Sears to get the family pictures, and they set it on the side like, okay, we're
next,
done. It's a different experience working with me. So how did I get started with photography? So I got that bug from my father, who had his uncle got it from him. So my great uncle Duke is the original family photographer, and I've always been interested, like light and glass and texture and all that has always been an interest for me. So photography is the natural extension of that. So as my father got older, I picked up the family photography thing, and then when I was stationed in Germany, I bought a good film camera to document the travels, because we traveled a lot. So I have boxes and albums of pictures from my 4 years in Germany, from in Europe, all that. But then as the digital cameras came to life, I have a iteration of the digital cameras for every generation of digital cameras. There are, and I shoot all digital. I haven't picked up a film camera in years.
So I'm interested in this piece that you said about when you chronicled being in Germany. Are you going to do something with that? That sounds like a documentary.
I haven't.
It could be very interesting to see your journey through.
But frankly, later in life, as a culture, Americans are like go to Europe. That Europe's where we came from, right? Well, we didn't come from Europe. We came from Africa. So, 2017, I took my first trip to Africa. I'm interested in new adventures and discoveries in Africa.
Okay.
My show Colored. I had a lot. I pulled a lot of images from my more recent travels from that, and discovered that they were all part of the African diaspora. So I got to see people of color, people of African descent, living lives differently in different places, different other cultures that they've incorporated into their current lives. That's interesting for me. So there's all these places in Europe are documented and photographed.
You remember them? Okay.
I don't need to do that.
Let's talk about. I like what's on your T-shirt. Black hair. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So, Black Hair is my latest exhibit. It's my love letter to Black people and Black culture. And there are 41 pieces in the collection that range from the Afro-futuristic looks to like intimate but familiar family settings. Like I have an image of a friend of mine and his daughter on their back deck in Brooklyn, and she's cutting his hair. That quintessential memory that we share. And when people came through the exhibit, they experienced that. They could relate to it. They were taken to a place or a person or a feeling or a smell from that was positive from their background, and it was what I wanted to do, and it was just really beautiful to see people have these beautiful experiences. And the Afro-futuristic pieces, I work with 3 collaborators. Melanie Williams is the hair artist. Trayvon Green is the makeup artist, and he and I collaborated on the wardrobe. And Grace Yaboa Ofari.
Very good.
Grace Obora Ofari, better known as True Face by Grace, is a contemporary African jewelry artist. So
all these pieces came together and all of that.
Yeah, and we did I basically worked a good chunk of last summer designing the shoot, and I've rented 2 studios in a place that has a series of they have 3 studios. I took 2 of them, did hair, makeup, wardrobe, jewelry in one, did principal photography in the other, and made some magic happen. We assembled the parts that created this whole that was more than any of us would have achieved singly, more than we had imagined, and the models just were also amazing. So it's just beautiful thing. So and that was one of two major shoots I did to create content for the show, and I did several smaller ones, in the getting the real people looks, and I wanted to have a show, not like a two-part show or anything. So bringing the Afrofuturistic looks into a cohesive, experience with the other looks was tricky. But it was I decided to let it happen. I decided to let discover what the show was going to be about as we went. But to curate, to title the pieces, and to bring the whole thing together, I sat with the images and realized that, gosh, they're super strong. They have personality. They have character. So I created characters for them. I named them and wrote a short story. The short story is called "Save the Queen." And after I did that, then I can curate the show. There's a beginning, middle, end. There's drama, there's conflict, all that. And and it was like really cool. And people really it really resonated with folks. So that was also cool. So that is going to be. I'm going to do a coffee table book. On that. And that's like on my to-do list. Not because I want to do it in time for like the sort of just available for before the holidays.
Okay.
So,
well, that would be great. So, in our remaining minutes, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about career change? As we both know, that my parents too work for government. They work one job. They've had maybe 3 homes in their time. Everything, the security, they were more secure. What would you tell someone just starting or thinking about career change, advice that you would give them?
Wow, it's the world's just a different place now, because the employees don't have loyalty toward the companies, and companies don't have loyalty toward the employees like that. So that's different. Let me like put it like that's different, period. And the next point I'd like to make on that is work for yourself. Like, figure out where your passions are and figure out how to make money with it, and you'll go farther faster working for yourself. I think working for other people, you can learn a lot, but make that like part of your planned journey, right? This is an education thing for you, and then go do something for yourself. I mean, gosh, because I worked for 34 years, and I got a paycheck every 2 weeks for 34 years. So that first paycheck I didn't get was crazy. I'd worked for 34 years, and I've been responsible, and I saved and all that. So I wasn't wanting for anything. It's just like that security was not there anymore, and it took some adjustment to do that. But I think the first time I made money with my camera, it might have been $100. I don't remember, but that was the best $100
that was
I
it.
had, right?
Because it was something from
right. And the big paychecks didn't
give you the same meaning or same feeling.
Just didn't. So to summarize that whole thing, like after, and I don't regret. I use everything I've learned to every job I've had with what I'm doing now. So I don't regret anything with that. It's been a wonderful life, and I've gotten to see and do things that I wouldn't have done had I made different decisions before. But I guess if there's one thing I wish I'd done, it was leave sooner. But I didn't want to leave any money on the tables, and I didn't. But anyways, but if I left sooner, I probably wouldn't have gotten to the point where when I realized, let me see if I can say this, when I was comfortable with working as an artist, I realized that I felt like I gotten my soul back. Okay, so had I left before, I felt like I lost my soul. But it's it's an insidious process. It's not like a light bulb. But when I felt like I got it back, it wasn't insidious. I felt it. So
How can our listeners that's oh my God, that's so good. How can our listeners contact you on social media or see your wonderful works?
so my website is really hard to remember. MarvinBowser.photography.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that.
MarvinBowser.photography. And that's the main site. They'll get you pretty much everywhere else. And my photography-based Instagram is Marvimage. So at MarVimage.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you for coming in. You got to come back.
Just let me know.
This has been very interesting. I mean, I've known you since 2004, and I don't think we've talked at any length like this. And
and the whole time I was in the military, I was doing stuff that was like really some of could not talk about.
Okay.
But then all the technical stuff, most people aren't interested in.
Yeah.
So I tend to not do it. And then working like crazy long hours, I didn't want to talk about what people did, right? I was like, let's talk about something else. Because if you're going to ask me and you're not going to understand. And
it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you all for tuning into Inside Style. I'm George Worrell, and remember, real style starts with being comfortable in your own skin. We'll see you next time.